Hi, and welcome to Early Retirement Roadmap, the show where I help you prepare for and thrive in early retirement. When people ask, how much do I need to retire early? What they usually want is one magic number. Just give me the number. Tell me I've got enough. Let me know if I can finally walk out of work and never look back. And believe me, I get it, because before I retired, I wanted the same thing. I wanted some clean, simple answer that would tell me, yep, you're good, go enjoy your life. But here's the problem, there isn't just one number. There are really a handful of numbers that drive whether your plan works or not. And even if one of them is off by more than a little, your whole plan can look a lot better on paper than it actually is in real life. So, in this episode, I want to walk you through the 5 numbers I think matter most if you want to retire, especially if you want to retire early. And I'm going to go through these numbers not in some complicated, nerdy spreadsheet eyes glaze over kind of way. Well, maybe just a tiny bit nerdy, but in a useful way, because this is really about getting a realistic picture of whether early retirement is actually doable for you. And I'll tell you right now, this is not one of those generic retirement videos built around Medicare, a pension, and retiring at 67. This is for the people trying to retire before 65, when you may still need to buy your own health insurance, manage taxes carefully, and make your portfolio carry more of the load for a lot longer. So let's walk through the 5 numbers you really need to know. But before we do so, remember this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not personalized financial, tax, legal, or investment advice. The first number is your real spending number. And I do mean your real spending number, not your fantasy budget, not your, well, I guess technically we could survive on rice and beans and never leave the house budget. I mean, what your life is actually going to cost. This is where a lot of people get tripped up right out of the gate. They say, well, once I retire, I won't be commuting, I won't be paying as much taxes, I won't be working, maybe the house is paid off, so I'll probably spend way less. And yeah, some expenses may go down, but some don't. And some actually go up. You may travel more, go out more, pick up hobbies, help your kids or grandkids more than you expected, spend more in healthcare. That can be a real huge expense, actually, if you're not careful. You may spend more just because now you actually have time to do things. Funny how that works. So, before you can even begin to answer the question, how much do I need to retire early? You need a realistic estimate of what you expect to spend in a year. And I would encourage you to think about this in layers. Start with your core monthly bills, housing, groceries, utilities, insurance, transportation costs. Then add in the things that make retirement enjoyable: travel, dining out, hobbies, entertainment, gifts, experiences. Then add the regular stuff people just forget about: car repairs, home maintenance, replacing appliances, vet bills, trips, and the fun things too. Stuff that isn't monthly, but definitely still shows up. Because if your plan only works in a perfectly controlled month where nothing ever breaks, and you have not built in a budget for doing the things you really want to enjoy in retirement, it's not much of a plan. Now, for some people, that number might be 50,000 a year. For others, it might be 80,000. For others, it might be 120,000 or more. There is no universal correct number, but there is a correct number for you. The second number is your health insurance number. And for early retirees, this is a big one. Honestly, this is one of the biggest reasons I think generic retirement advice often falls apart when you try to apply to early retirement. Because if you retire before 65, you're not on Medicare yet. So now the question becomes, how are you going to cover health insurance, and how much is that really going to cost? And for many early retirees, the Affordable Care Act is the main option. And that makes sense because these plans cover all essential health benefits. They can't deny you because of pre-existing conditions, and they can give people a real path to buying solid health coverage before Medicare kicks in. But here's the catch. The Affordable Care Act can be incredibly helpful or incredibly expensive depending on your income and how well you plan. That's why I talk about this in so many of my podcasts and videos because this one line item can swing your annual spending by thousands and thousands of dollars. If your income is managed carefully, your premiums might be very reasonable. But if your income runs too high, things can get ugly in a hurry. And now that the enhanced subsidies are gone, ending last year, this matters even more because for 2026, the 400% federal poverty level or FPL cliff is back. And yes, I said cliff because that's exactly what it is. For a household of two in the continental US, that line is $84,600 for 2026 marketplace subsidy eligibility. But go over that 84,600 cliff for a household of two, even by a little, you can lose all premium subsidy help and be on the hook for the full monthly premiums. And I'll include an FPL table link down in the description or show notes so you can look up the different thresholds based on household size. And just keep in mind, Hawaii and Alaska use different FPL amounts than the continental US. And as many of you already know, full price Affordable Care Act coverage can be very expensive. And if you're used to employer sponsored health insurance, this can be a real wake up call. You may not even realize what coverage really costs because your employer has been quietly picking up a big chunk of the tab all along while you were employed. Then you retire, look at that full premium, and suddenly it's like, well, hello there. This is why this takes planning. And one really important point here is that this is based on your modified adjusted gross income or MAGI, not the same thing as your spending power. Those are two very different numbers. So don't get tripped up on this because your MAGI is your income on paper for Affordable Care Act purposes. Your spending power is what you actually have available to live on. And with smart planning, those two numbers do not have to be the same. For example, maybe a couple wants to spend $95,000 a year for their retirement spending. That does not automatically mean they want or need their MAGI to be $95,000. Part of that money might come from some Roth principal. Part might come from taxable brokerage withdrawals where only the gain portion shows up in MAGI. So yes, you may need more than $84,600 in actual spending power, but still want to plan things so your MAGI stays under that $84,600 cliff for a household of two in the continental US. That is where withdrawal strategy, account types, and income control start to matter a lot. And this is also where early retirement income planning is not just about how much you spend, it's also about where that money is coming from and what shows up on your tax return. And when I say you need to know your health insurance number, I don't mean your premium only. I mean your likely premium, your deductible exposure, your out-of-pocket risk, and whether your retirement income plan is likely to keep you in a range where your Affordable Care Act coverage is still manageable financially. And if you want to go deeper on that whole Affordable Care Act piece, I've done several podcasts on it already, and I'll include those titles in the description or show notes. These episodes cover all your health insurance options, strategies to control your modified adjusted gross income to stay under the 400% FPL cliff, etc., to really help you with all of this. Because one of the easiest ways to fool yourself into thinking you're ready to retire is to underestimate healthcare. You run the numbers, everything looks fine, and then suddenly you realize your health plan costs way more than you expected, and now your spending estimate was off from the very beginning. That's not a small miss. That can change the entire plan. All right, enough on that one. The third number is your tax number, and this is another one that gets ignored all the time because, well, let's be honest, who actually enjoys talking about taxes? For most people, the minute taxes come up, their eyes glaze over, but this really matters. A lot of people focus on how much they need to spend, but they don't spend enough time thinking about how much they need to withdraw to actually net that spending, because not all retirement income is taxed the same. For example, money coming from a traditional 401k, 403b, or traditional individual retirement account or IRA is generally taxed as ordinary income. The taxable portion of Social Security can also count as ordinary income. Short-term capital gains, which usually means gains on investments held for a year or less, are generally taxed at ordinary income rates too. On the other hand, qualified Roth withdrawals are generally tax-free, meaning the account has met the basic rules, typically that you're at least age 59 and a half and the Roth has been open for at least 5 years. And if you pull from a taxable brokerage account, you are usually not taxed on the whole withdrawal. Your original cost basis comes back to you tax free, and only the gain portion is what may be taxed. And if those gains are long term capital gains, meaning the investment was held for more than a year, they are generally taxed at the more favorable long term capital gains rates. So, right away, you can see why this matters. Two retirees might each need the same 70,000 of spending power, but if one is pulling mostly from traditional accounts and the other has a mix of cash, Roth principal, and brokerage assets with modest gains, those two people can end up with a very different tax bill. And this is also where the Affordable Care Act connection comes in. Here we go again, and it shows how all of this is tied together because for marketplace subsidy purposes, it is not just about what you spend, it is about what shows up in your modified adjusted gross income or MAGI. Traditional IRA, 401k, and 403b withdrawals generally increase MAGI. Taxable Social Security can increase MAGI if you start taking Social Security at age 62, for example. Capital gains can increase MAGI. Qualified Roth withdrawals generally do not. And return of basis from shares you sell in a taxable brokerage account generally does not either. So now taxes and healthcare are definitely talking to each other. That is why I think it's so important to know not just your spending number, but also your tax aware spending number. What do you need to withdraw from which accounts in order to support your lifestyle while also keeping taxes and healthcare costs under control? Now, I do not want to turn this episode into a full blown tax lecture because this topic can absolutely become its own episode and rabbit hole. But I want you to at least come away with this idea. Where your money comes from matters. It matters for your tax bill, it matters for your Affordable Care Act subsidies, and it can have a big impact on how efficient your early retirement plan really is. That is a very different question than just saying, well, I think we spend about 6 grand a month. The fourth number is your bridge number. This is one of the biggest differences between early retirement and more traditional retirement. If you retire at 62, 58, 55, or even younger, you have to bridge the gap between the day you stop working and the day other income sources and healthcare coverage help kicks in. Maybe that's Social Security, maybe that's a pension, maybe it's Medicare at 65, maybe it's all of the above. But until those things arrive, your portfolio and your cash reserves are doing most of the heavy lifting. So your bridge number is really the amount of money and flexibility you need to cover those in between years. And the longer that bridge is, the more important this becomes. This is where people can run into trouble if they say, well, I'm eligible for Social Security later, so I'm fine. Well, maybe. But what has to happen between now and then? For example, how many years do you need your investments to carry you? And is Social Security really going to cover all your costs? How much of a cash runway do you want set aside so you're not forced to sell investments in a bad market? And that can really harm you if you have to do that. It's really important to have a solid cash runway, and I'll include a dedicated episode in the description or show notes I recently did that not only talks about determining how much you need, but how to build and where to store it too. So a bridge plan really matters a lot because early retirement isn't just about whether the plan works eventually, it's about whether it works in the years immediately after you leave work when your portfolio is often the most vulnerable. The fifth number is your portfolio support number. This is where you pull everything together and ask the big question. Based on my spending, healthcare, taxes, and bridge years, how much does my portfolio need to support each year? This is really the heart of it because once you know how much has to come from your investments, now you can start pressure testing the plan and ask questions like, what withdrawal rate does that imply? Is it reasonable? Does it still work if the market has a rough first few years? Do you have flexibility to cut spending if you need to? Could part-time income make a big difference? Could delaying Social Security improve the plan later on? This is where the answer stops being emotional and starts getting more concrete. And that's a good thing because I know when you're thinking about retirement, especially early retirement, it's easy to get caught between two extremes. On one side, there's the you can totally retire in almost nothing, just believe in yourself crowd. And on the other side, there's the crowd that makes it sound like if you don't have a giant pile of money, zero uncertainty, and every last detail figured out, then you have no business retiring yet. When the reality is that most people are somewhere in the middle, they just need a realistic framework. And that's really what these five numbers are, a framework, not a magic formula, not a one size fits all answer, but a much better way to think about the problem. So let's quickly recap the five numbers. Number one, your real annual spending. Number two, your health insurance number. Number three, your tax number. Number four, your bridge number. And number five, your portfolio support number. If you know those five numbers, you are far closer to answering the question, can I retire early, than someone who's just chasing one big generic target number they saw online in a YouTube video or heard on a podcast. Because the reality is, two people with the exact same portfolio can have completely different early retirement outcomes depending on their spending, taxes, healthcare costs, and how they manage the years before Medicare and Social Security and their timeline. That's why this matters. And honestly, this is also why I think so many people either retire too scared or work longer than they probably needed to. They're trying to make a huge life decision using incomplete math. So if you've been asking yourself, how much do I need to retire early? I'd encourage you to stop looking for one magic number. There really is no one size fits all magic number because everyone's situation is different. I repeat, everyone's situation is different. So please, please, please stop searching for that. Get real and start getting clarity on these five numbers so you get the numbers that are customized to your situation and needs. Now, if you're thinking, okay, Mike, this makes sense, but I'm not sure I want to figure all of this out by myself, that is completely fair, and you don't have to figure this out by yourself. And nor should you if you're not comfortable, as this is a huge decision. Certainly get help from a professional. It can be well worth the money. A good financial planner can help you think through the moving parts, spot weak points in the plan, and give you more confidence in the decision. And really, this is something you are going to have to figure out one way or another at some point. Another option is to use a tool like Bolden or start with that to make your plan and then review it with a professional. That's what I did. Bolden is a planning tool I personally use and still use myself to monitor my retirement. It's a great tool for modeling all of this, testing different what if scenarios, and seeing how changes to spending, taxes, healthcare, or withdrawals can affect the plan. I found it incredibly helpful because it let me pressure test things and build confidence before I actually retired. And if you want to check it out, I've put a link to Bolden down in the description or show notes. And if you want extra help with all of this too, I've also created a companion tool for this episode called the 5 Numbers to Retire Early Worksheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet that walks you step by step through estimating these 5 numbers and also helps you compare your current portfolio to different withdrawal scenarios. It's inside my Patreon tools library where I usually make at least one tool for each major YouTube or podcast topic I cover. I've got 3 different Patreon levels, so there's likely one that fits what you're looking for and your budget. At one level, you get access to the tools library, including the worksheet. At another level, you get the tools plus early access and ad-free podcast episodes. And at the top tier, you can ask me your early retirement questions directly, along with everything else that comes with the lower levels. So if you want this worksheet and more help thinking through your own plan, I'll put my Patreon link down in the description. The main thing is this: do not let this topic stay fuzzy forever. Whether you work through it yourself, use Bolden or another like tool, talk to a professional, or ask me questions via Patreon, the goal is to get clarity. And once you have the clarity, you may be in a better position than you think. The question of how much do you need to retire is just too important to leave as a vague question floating around in the back of your mind with no clarity. Thank you so much for listening. This is Mike Upland, early retiree at the age of 55 in 2024. Until next time, take care and make the most of today. Until next time, take care and make the most of today.